Welcome to the Comic Rundown, brought to you by Comic Den, or The Comic Den. Sorry, I changed my name and now I'm like rebranding, so I got rid of the Comic Den 316. I'm your host, Ace Knuckles, and I'm joined today by David Mueller. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at The Comic Den. Is there anywhere that you want people to find you, or do you do anything like that?
I keep a pretty low profile online, so I'm
okay. You're not trying to promote
hard to
anything.
Find, and I'm not trying to be
Gotcha.
easy to find. So.
Okay, for those of you tuning in for the first time, let me explain what I'm doing. I find someone willing to read some comics, and then we discuss what we read and how it changed our lives. I want to make it clear, I am not an expert or a comic historian. There are plenty of people on YouTube if you want that. When it comes to comics, I just like reading them. I enjoy talking about them. I'm also not an expert on Star Wars, and that is something that people get really twitchy about, is if you put somebody on the wrong planet or call an android the wrong letter. So, just not an expert. Don't judge me on that. I'm just a guy who's forcing his employees to support my hobby. David, would you call yourself a Star Wars fan?
Boy, I think that's a tough question. I think in comparison to people I would consider a Star Wars fan, no.
Okay.
But I enjoy Star Wars. I grew up watching it, so yes, in that sense.
You're not a super fan?
I'm not a super fan. That's a
Gotcha.
good way to put it.
Okay.
I enjoy Star Wars. I like it. I like the universe and the worlds and the characters. So yes, I'm a fan.
All right, so what started your Star Wars fan journey?
Let's see. I said I grew up watching it.
Mm-hmm.
My dad and my grandpa both enjoyed Star Wars, and they kind of got me hooked on it. Watched the movies as a kid, and then I guess I'm a fan to the extent of I enjoy watching the movies. That's about as far as I'll go.
Yeah. So which movie's your favorite?
That's a good question.
It's a loaded question too.
There's so many. There's so many cool things in each movie.
Yeah.
I think I still find Empire Strikes Back to be unique because it's just a different world. Like you get a lot of the Star Wars movies, the worlds tend to be like a desert or jungle.
Right.
But is it Hoth?
Yeah.
Empire Strikes Back, Hoth. Okay, so Hoth tends to be like, it's just different because it's a
the barren ice planet. Yeah.
And then of course I loved I since I'm not a super fan, I'll get the letters wrong. Is it ATs, the four-legged?
Yeah.
Okay. I always thought those were the coolest thing, and then you had the rebels were using the little
speeders or whatever,
two-man speeder things to take them down. I just found that whole scene really cool. And of course, you have classic Han Solo cuts the thing open and gets inside of it. Like, there's just some great scenes in that one. So I think that's probably one of my favorites.
That's kind of why I liked Rogue One.
Yeah,
was because I always liked the AT-ATs,
right?
But I also liked it whenever it wasn't on a desert planet or space battle, and then you had this just tropical.
Now that you say that, I was just thinking within the, what do you call it, the trilogies.
Yeah.
But Rogue One was really interesting.
Yeah, it's probably one of my favorites.
I liked it. There was such a diversity of worlds shown there, and I think they try and do that in a lot of the Star Wars movies, but it was definitely unique.
Yeah.
And I was surprised because I thought, I kind of already know what the movie's about.
Yeah.
Like you kind of know the ending, but it was really well done.
So do you ever you do some research into like fan theories, right?
A little bit.
Yeah.
It probably depends.
Did you ever deep dive into any fan theories during like the Rogue One previews and stuff like that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, of course, I things I read were like, stealing the plans, like, and I'm like, okay, well, that sounds interesting. I I think more of the things I read were like, people were like, "Oh, that sounds like how are you gonna make a whole movie out of that?"
Yeah.
But honestly, like
They did pretty freaking good.
they did an awesome job. And it's like if they're gonna start taking one line from every movie script from the original 3 or whatever, and make a movie like that, I'd be willing to watch it.
Well, and to me, Rogue One played 2 roles. It showed that you can have a successful movie without Jedi, and it also cleared up a 40-year plot hole.
Right. They're like, how did they get these plans to destroy this thing?
Well, and not just that, but why was there a hole that led directly to the thing that would destroy the Death Star?
Right. You're like, this was too easy of an answer to destroy this.
Yeah. Well, and did you ever watch Family Guy's spoof on the Star Wars?
No.
They did like a whole trilogy.
Okay.
And originally they just did the one because they thought it'd be funny, but then it made so much money that the running joke on the Family Guys was that Fox was forcing them to do it, and that they hated it. And by the end, they have this scrolling credits thing,
right?
And it says, "We literally don't want to do this. We're so sorry. We put very little effort into it."
And is this in scrolling credits in the Star Wars format? Of course.
Yeah. And so as you're reading, it's like, "We're so sorry. We'll make it up to you guys next time." But they addressed that in the movie. They're like, "So, is there any way that somebody could destroy this Death Star?" No. Well, except for this tiny little hole, but we'll just put some plywood over it.
Right. No one will ever know it's there.
Yeah, so it solved that problem,
right.
Which was something that a lot of people who are really into the fandom would complain about. Or people who just like complaining would complain about.
Okay, now that you're talking about Rogue One, I think what made the movie so enjoyable for me was the droid, and I don't remember its name.
K2SO.
That was such fantastic dialogue, and it was like comedic timing, and comedic relief.
Yeah.
It was just really well crafted.
It showed you could have a droid who could be dry, but not like C-3PO.
Yes.
Where C-3PO was like physical comedy, and he didn't know he was being funny, and
right, he was the joke.
Right. Whereas this K2SO, everybody else is the joke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I really liked that. I think it's a good like play on like the droid becoming more human than the humans in some ways.
Right. And I had a discussion on the last Darth Vader episode that I did with my friend. And my question was, okay, so at what point are the droids not droids? At what point are they not robots anymore?
Right. Because
they seemingly have emotions. There's that one scene, God, I'm going to get so much crap for this. I don't remember which one it is, but they're walking through this torture room, and they're like burning the bottom of droids' feet. And like the droids are screaming in pain.
Is that where the little not Ewoks? It's the sand.
The Jawas.
Jawas, yes.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know if it
in
was...
their big moving.
No. I think it might have been. What was the one where they captured Han Solo and were getting ready to put him in carbonite? That was the second one, right? Episode 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was that one. I could be mistaken, but yeah, I was like, they're robots. They don't have nerve endings, but could you program? And C-3PO always complains about being hurt. He always says "ow" and makes those noises, and so
smacks his head, runs into things.
Yeah, and so could you program into a robot to feel pain, even though they don't have nerve endings?
It is. That. I don't know. I haven't thought about that. Because I guess the whole point of the droid is you're designing it to be as human as possible without being human.
So are they just that? Is the program that good at mimicking human behavior?
That it's mimicking pain and running into things. And,
right.
I don't know. I guess I just recently, maybe last weekend, 2 weekends ago, I watched Solo for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And the droid in there with Lando Calrissian, I guess it's his droid partner.
Right.
they kind of play this gray line there because it's like inciting rebellion, and then it's like, does he love the droid? The droid kind of thinks he loves.
And then the droid's in love
her?
with, and then the droid's in love with him.
Right. So then then it brings up this thing is like, well, they obviously voiced it to sound like a female, but I'm like, are droids female or male? Like, does that?
Well, in that too. Okay, so if I'm programming a computer, what I'm going for is efficiency. How much extra line of code would I have to do to make it a gender?
Right.
Male, female, whatever.
Right.
How that's me specifically going in and doing that. Unless, again, the algorithm in the code builds on itself and it learns.
It's kind of more of the self-aware.
Which would make sense if you're around Lando and Lando attracts women.
Right.
Then you're picking up on all these bodies. So it's either going to be a slutty man robot or it's going to be a female droid who's really into Lando because that's what it sees all the time.
Right.
Solving world problems.
Right,
here.
exactly. one droid at a time.
Yeah. Okay, so what was your least favorite movie?
I don't know. I think there's things about episode. What would be the technical? Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith that I didn't like as much. Clone Wars, I think I always felt like the plot hole there was like you have clones, and they're just cloned, and so you have this whole army. And I think one of the things that I didn't like about it was they're just cannon fodder, but then at the same time they're trying to make you think that they're not cannon fodder.
Yeah. So one of the questions that, okay, so if you clone me, you have an exact replica of me. Exact. So I guess it goes into like the nature versus nurture sort of thing. If I had an exact clone, but then it was separated from me, could you raise it to be smarter or whatever? Could it be more than what my potential is now?
Right.
Because you have some that are really good at shooting. You have them rising through the ranks. And you would think that if it was a clone, they would all be the same skill level.
Right.
But clearly they're not.
Clearly they're not. Yeah, and I think I haven't taken a dive into... Because I know they have a whole series of novels, I think, based on an elite squad of clone troopers. Is that...
Yeah, you have to be careful with the novels now that Disney owns it.
Oh, they're not canon.
Yeah, Disney has said... Yeah, the books still exist, obviously. And it's so okay. So what's weird to me is Disney had to make a statement, that the books are no longer canon, which makes sense. You come in, we bought this, we want to cut off this. It's too complex for what we're trying to build. The books don't count as Star Wars anymore. But then Disney also felt the need to say the books still exist. Well, duh, they still exist. I can go read them right now.
It's self-evident.
We're not saying that... Nobody thinks that you're going through and burning all the books to get rid of the evidence. I don't understand it. And so they made the statement that, this is like an Elseworld thing. Why don't you just say they're not canon anymore? Why do you have to explain that they're Elseworld? Why do you have to... Why does that have to be a thing? It's crazy to me.
That is kind of weird that they... It's like trying to cover their tracks, but not really at the same time.
I guess what it gives them an out to then bring something back in.
If they want it later.
Yeah, and so like somebody at Disney says, man, I just read this book that was written 20 years ago. This would be an awesome story. Like, oh yeah, we'll just pull that in.
Right.
So I don't know. It's weird how fans react to things and how... People have to follow what they think.
And it seems to me like there's like different levels of Star Wars fans. There's like super fans or hyper fans, and and then there's the general. I guess this is what the category I would put myself in is like, I enjoy the movies. I think they're really cool.
Yeah.
I enjoy the stories. And then there's people who are like Trekkies, Star Trek.
Yeah.
Screw Star Wars.
I never understood that either. Why would you close yourself off?
Right, and they're totally different. Like Star Trek takes place in like our galaxy, our time span, if you will.
Yeah.
Whereas Star Wars is like always, how they start off like a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So it's obviously different.
Yeah.
So I've always thought like I like sci-fi in general. So I enjoy both of them.
Yeah, I think it's just people who liked Star Trek felt like they were marginalized.
Okay.
Because if you got in from the ground floor of Star Trek,
right,
then after the first season, they like canceled it.
Is this like way back?
Yeah, like
early on in
the
TV?
first Star Trek. It went like one season.
Okay.
And then they said, you know what, it's just not doing it for anybody. They shut it off. And then like whenever they announced it, people were like marching in the streets down in Hollywood, and they were like freaking out, protesting, and so they brought it back.
Right. I didn't realize all that.
Yeah. And then all the movies later. I think it's just Star Trek has always been kind of the underdog. I mean, it's never gotten the publicity, and I think that's because it started as a show.
Right.
It didn't start as a movie. Star Wars started off as a blockbuster, the sci-fi movie.
Yeah, okay, so take this train of thought here. I mean, obviously, I'm 28, and I wasn't around for the first Star Wars film. But everyone says it was like a monumental film. And watching it as a kid, I always enjoyed it, but even as an adult now, looking back on it, I'm like, I don't quite understand the context for what made it such a huge blockbuster monumental film.
I think it was the technology.
Okay.
Not the technology that they were using in the movie, but the technology they made to make the movie.
Right.
Have you ever seen like a behind the scenes?
I've seen a few things.
Have you seen how they did the scroller?
No, I don't think I saw it.
It was on a machine that looked like a treadmill. And they had the camera set up at an angle, and then they had this track that would just go like this, and it would just go around.
Wow.
I'm sure there's an actual name for it, but whenever I saw it, I was like, that's a treadmill. You guys used a treadmill. That's all that is.
I saw one, like a behind the scenes thing where what's the name of was it Lucasfilm? What was it before that? THX or some type of...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been Lucasfilm since the prequels.
But they were like showing how they did, I think it was early on doing the lightsaber battles, and...
Yeah, it was just a metal stick.
Yeah. And then they had this, they were showing, this is long, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, so it's been a while since I'm trying to recall these thoughts, but there was a scene where, where they're flying in the trenches with the X-Wings and TIE fighters? I don't know I can't remember what movie it is. Is it the first one?
Whenever Luke blew up the Death Star?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. But they were showing how they built this thing and then kind of tried to make it look like they were flying, and I was really fascinated by it and how people hadn't done things like that before. Yeah,
the whole thing was shot with like a black sheet and some models that they had made.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, they probably used this a little bit before, but it kind of set the tone. I was watching a behind the scenes on one of the Resident Evils.
Okay.
It was like apocalypse after the world had like gone to crap and everything was a desert.
Right.
There's a scene where they're driving this giant semi and then it like flips over and explodes. And then you watch the behind the scenes and it's just a truck that's maybe a foot long and it's driving in like a sandbox and it like flips over and there's like a little poof of sand.
So they do like super high res slow motion and then
super high res right there like on the ground, and then whenever they shoot up that puff, then they'll go in the computer and they'll add like the explosion part of it.
Okay.
But yeah, they're still using for like stuff like that.
Right.
They're still using models.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how, and like I said, I don't know if Star Wars started that.
Right.
but they're definitely the ones that made it famous.
Right.
So, I mean, this was the first time you had giant space battles.
That's one of the things I've always loved about Star Wars, is the battle scenes between all these, ships. I guess I find space warfare really interesting to begin with. As I said earlier, I'm a sci-fi fan, so...
Yeah, what I don't... it boggles my mind because we're sitting on the Earth, and so everything is, like, up and down. But you see these scenes where they're, like, spinning.
Right.
And if you were in space, that would have no bearing on you at all.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
I also have a problem with how they propel themselves in space.
Yeah.
Because even... I don't know, maybe I'm just too dumb to understand how you move in a vacuum. Because you have to have something to push against in order to move.
Right, because when you, like, see the space shuttle, they're always, like, shooting a jet or a puff of, I don't know, what is it, oxygen or water or something?
Compressed air.
And then if they want to move a different way, but it's still, like, if you shoot it, you're moving left, and then you're going to shoot and go up, so to speak. But you're still moving over, and now you're moving up at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, the compressed air makes sense because the force of it leaving might do something.
But I guess in Star Wars, they have an engine that's... Yeah, they have science. It's magic science.
That's my favorite thing ever. I was reading... There's a comic book called Invincible.
Okay.
That I read through. And there's a scene like, oh man, I didn't think we were going to make it out of it. Because it's like a giant fight scene, and then it cuts to, at the very bottom, like, man, I didn't think we were going to make it out of there. How did you do it? And he goes, well, I could explain it, but it'd be too detailed. Let's just know that it got done. And so, there's another movie a friend of mine told me about called Thank You for Smoking.
Okay.
Where this guy goes around the country and tries to get people to promote smoking.
Uh-huh.
They're talking about this movie. He's like, you can't smoke on a spaceship. It's pure oxygen. You'd explode. He goes, no. All you do is you say, thank God for that such and such machine that lets me smoke up here, and then nobody asks any questions. And so that's all you have to do in Star Wars, too, is you put ion or photon or something like that.
Proton, torpedo.
Yeah, that's all you have to do. Just put a science word and then your noun, and then you have it.
And cue explosion.
Yeah, science. Because of science. We did it because of science. Yeah, it's one thing that did bother me about, like, the originals is the lightsabers. Okay, so we all have it in our mind that lightsabers are tubes of energy and light that go up. But whenever you watch that first battle between Obi-Wan and Vader, it's clearly a blade.
Right.
Because when he turns it, you can't see it anymore.
Right.
And then it goes back. And so I wonder if they were just like, okay, that's going to be too hard to do from now on.
Right.
Where they're just going to be tubes of energy.
Right.
But it always bothered me. And I don't understand how Vader was scary in the original ones, because that lightsaber battle between Obi-Wan and him was weak. It was like weak sauce.
That's something that... Was it Rogue One where they ended with Vader coming?
Yes.
That was the scariest Vader scene.
He's like force choking people through the walls.
Boom. And of course they set it up so perfectly. It's like pitch black. Boom. He thumbs on the famous, boom sound of the lightsaber.
Yeah.
And then it's red. The hallway's red. Oh, it was just so good.
It was amazing. That's
scenes.
the Vader I've been waiting for.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, did you have any reservations about Disney taking over Star Wars?
Not really. Maybe that shows how much of a fan I really am. I mean, I figured they would do a good job. I don't know. They seem to have done a good job with... Well, when did they acquire Marvel?
Was that? I think it was before Star Wars.
So, I hadn't been disappointed with the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
So I thought they have a fairly good track record with those. They'll probably do a decent job. I think my reservation I would have is, I think they spent a pretty little fortune on it.
Yeah.
And so they're going to want to get their money back. So I'm just waiting for this, like, sense of have we had enough Star Wars yet? Because they're rolling it out so fast and so many of them.
Well, now they're taking the Marvel route.
Right.
And so it's like an expanded universe. So they're going to have Star Wars movies. Then you're going to have... like they've already got 2 or 3 shows slated for their new streaming platform, so it's
and they're doing books. They've been having a lot of books, and of course they're doing comics now, right? Or they've probably been doing that for a while.
Yeah. So that brings me to my next question. Like, how do you feel about the comic books, which very few people comparatively will read? How do you feel about them setting canon?
I think it could be real tough because if you have a lot of let's take the Solo movie for instance.
Mm-hmm.
You have this cameo by Darth Maul, and everyone. Well, first of all, I don't know if people know where in the chronology exactly in comparison to all the other things that have happened. Where does Solo fall? That was my first thought when I saw the Darth Maul cameo. Like, well, where is this exactly in the chronology of everything? And then my second thought was, I kind of already knew that Darth Maul, in canon, has survived and then gone on to do other things, but that wasn't easy to figure out. Like, I had to, what is it? Is it Clone Wars?
Yeah.
Okay. So I haven't ever watched Clone Wars, but I have a buddy who really enjoys Clone Wars, and he told me about that. So we talked about it back and forth, Darth Maul alive, et cetera, et cetera. So I knew all of that, but I was like, most people are going to be like, I don't quite understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
So I think when you're using a medium, let's say comics, that most of the general population who's consuming your movies, right? Because that's generally how Star Wars has been marketed to us.
Right.
When you're setting canon through comics, you're going to have to explain it a little more clearly in the movies, or make some connections, or make it easier to, I don't know, something to make the connection for us.
And I think the way they revealed it in Solo was kind of a nod to them knowing that most people wouldn't know.
Right.
Because it was a big reveal.
That's true.
If they assumed everybody knew,
right,
then they probably would have just been like, and Darth Maul from the very beginning. So I kind of see that. But yeah, if I didn't keep up with comics or Clone Wars or anything like that, I'd be like, wait, he got chopped in half and then fell down a well.
Right. I was talking to my dad because he kind of likes Star Wars and he'd watched Solo, and I said, "Hey, what did you?" Because I figured he's kind of in this casual viewer category, right? Grew up watching the first Star Wars film when he was when he was younger, and so he really likes it, right? I got him hooked, at least into the movie verse of it,
right?
So I said, "What did you think about the Darth Maul thing?" And he's like, "I thought he was dead. He got cut in half. Like, how do you survive getting cut in half?" And I was like, "That's a great question, but he's alive."
Yeah. Well, and how many people have fallen down a well in Star Wars and survived? And yet, everybody assumes that Palpatine's dead.
Right. He
fell down a well. He was thrown down a well. Right. He didn't even get chopped in half. He fell down a well. And he's the most powerful Sith Lord ever. Is that what they're setting up for?
That's actually quite an interesting parallel now that you say that.
I mean, Luke had his hand chopped off and fell down a well.
Right.
Also, why do they keep building these things in the middle of these spaceships?
You're like, guys, let's pick somewhere a little more friendly.
Yeah. Yeah, no railings in it. Well, I guess there was a railing when Luke fell off, and there's a railing when Palpatine fell over, but not when Maul fell out.
Does Luke fall down the well in the Sky City?
Yeah.
And then they pull the Millennium Falcon up.
Yeah,
and
he
get him on top.
Caught on an antenna.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And then he used the Force to call his sister over.
Okay, while we're on that, they pull this lightsaber out from nowhere. in what is it? Force Awakens?
Yeah.
Is that the lightsaber that fell out of Sky City?
It's his lightsaber.
So, where does that come from?
Well, if you find a lightsaber, you know it belongs to a Jedi who are long dead and illegal. So you definitely don't want to hold on to it. But you could also sell it for a lot of money. So it kind of makes sense that it would end up in like a smuggler / trader.
Okay, yeah.
Also the Force. So
is this like our science
yeah,
answer?
The Force. It's the Force.
That's Star Wars version. Science, the Force.
Yeah, it's the Force. Okay, so what did you think, in general terms, what did you think about the comic?
So I read Vader.
Yeah.
Is it or Darth Vader?
It's Volume 1.
Volume 1. Imperial Machine.
Yeah, this picks up directly after he goes, no! And then that's when it starts.
Cuts off.
Yeah.
Resume.
Right.
I actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I thought it adds some elements of humanness to the Vader without it being Anakin.
Right.
And I thought that was a really important distinction because you have Anakin, and I don't know, Episode 3, was it Revenge of the Sith? Is that the correct title? Has always been like, I don't know, I guess I've heard some people critique it, like, we all knew what was going to happen.
Right.
Type of thing, and I was like, yeah, I guess so.
Okay, hold on. My argument against that is you still watch historical movies, right?
Right.
You watch every World War II movie that comes out. You watch.
Right.
Everybody watches every movie that comes out about history, and you know how that's
lose.
Yeah. So that argument never held any water for me.
That's good. I like that rebuttal. I think that's fair. I think the part for me. Okay, so he goes in, he kills all of these kids essentially, and I'm like the evilness of that act doesn't seem to be represented very well in him as the character in the movie. I think that's the divorce.
It was a very large leap.
Yes.
Very large leap. To go from I'm sad to, well, I guess I have to kill all these kids now.
And you're like, what?
Yeah. 10 minutes ago you were trying to turn Palpatine in.
Right. And you your secret wife is having a baby, like, and now all of a sudden you're going to turn around and slaughter all these other kids? I'm like, that's... I mean, I know people can, over a series of small choices and compromises, get to places like that, but they didn't do a good job of portraying that transition in the movie.
And I'm wondering if it was time constraints, because those movies are long.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if maybe there was more. And they're like, listen, this movie's 5 hours right now. Let's
we need to go half at least.
Instead of chopping out all the politics and the Senate, let's chop out this part.
Of course. Why would we want to chop the politics?
The journey to Vader. Let's chop that. But yeah, it did seem like a really weird leap.
But I think the Vader that was portrayed, at least in this version of the comics I'm reading, that was much more believable. Like, this guy is full of rage, anger, frustration, bitterness, much more believable.
Right. Yeah, and so issue 1, I really enjoyed how it picks up about 5 minutes before the end of the movie.
Okay.
And they fix it. I always hated where he stood off of the block and he just goes, no.
Is this in the lava, when he's standing in the lava?
No, it's after.
It's been a while since I've seen that one.
It's after they drag him out of the lava and everything.
Okay, right.
And then they've got him on, they put the helmet like goes on. And then he steps off the operating table and realizes what he is and what had happened. And he just does the God, it's so bad. So bad. I don't understand why they did that. But the way they did it in here was amazing. So he gets off the table,
right.
and Palpatine's right there, and then he just slams Palpatine into the
right.
wall. Because there's got to be some confusion. He thought he was dead.
Right.
And we don't know what happens when you die in Star Wars, but he thought he was dead.
Right, so he's got this, there's like a Padme flashback going on.
Yeah.
He has the duel with, he kind of, I guess he doesn't duel him, but I guess that you're right, that explains why he's having this fighting encounter with Palpatine, because you're waking up basically from an extremely traumatic event.
Right.
Yeah, you've got to be confused.
So you've lost everything. You thought you were dead. Here you are on the table.
Right.
The last thing you probably remember is fighting Obi-Wan.
Right.
And then falling in lava. So the first person you see is probably going to get wrecked.
Now, I'm paging through here, and they're burning all these lightsabers, and that, I guess I hadn't ever thought about what are they doing with all the lightsabers from the Jedi they're killing.
Yeah, so I mean, I think they're using it more as a symbol.
Okay.
But
they've
also
been defeated type of thing.
Yeah, and we'll find out more like later on, kind of the journey of the Jedi when it comes to it. But yeah, I think for all the regular people, they're saying, here we're taking a step forward, we're burning all of this stuff, we're going to use this later.
Explain another bunny trail here, the crystals that are involved
in Kyber crystals.
Kyber crystals.
Yeah.
Okay. So it seemed like, was it in Rogue One where they're mining Kyber crystals?
Yeah.
So do you think they're extracting all the stones from these lightsabers they're burning in this comic? Because it seems like a waste.
Yeah, it could be. Now,
am I also correct?
No. I think they were using Kyber crystals in the Death Star.
Oh, so it's basically you're generating a giant beam of
because they have a power and they're a power source. I believe that's what they were doing.
That's making more sense. Well, I guess it just made me think like this seems to be a extremely rare material, or at least hard to come by. So I was just thinking like burning it seems like a silly idea. I don't know if you can have other uses.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe it's a small enough amount within lightsabers.
They may have taken the Kyber crystals out. I mean, they just shows them throwing the lightsabers in there.
And as you said, it's probably more of a symbol than anything else.
So we do get some information on Kyber crystals here,
right?
And Palpatine explains the red lightsaber,
and that's where he in this one where he's like has to overcome the crystal.
Yeah.
Is it forcing his will on the crystal?
He has to kill the owner,
right?
Then force his will back onto
the
crystal, and push his pain into it.
That's right.
So that it goes red. So, first off, how do you feel about them kind of going the midichlorian route with Kyber crystals?
What do you mean the midichlorian route?
Well, in the original 3, the Force was just this ambiguous thing that flowed through everything.
Right.
And then in the prequels, they made him into like herpes.
Right, because Anakin is born as
everybody's
midichlorians.
Yeah, everybody's got midichlorians, but some people have it so bad it's like causing outbreaks.
Good comparison.
So and then they kind of did the same thing with the Kyber crystals. Of the Kyber crystal will attach itself to a Jedi, and then you have to force your will and cause pain upon the Kyber crystal.
This is almost like a Harry Potter wand scheme as well, right? The wands pick.
It might be. I mean, that kind of brings me to my next question of like, how do different colored lightsabers come about?
Right.
Is it influenced by your will? Is it influenced by your personality?
Okay, so what are the colors we know of so far? We've got red, blue, green, purple.
In Clone Wars, they had a black one.
Okay, so that's 5.
And that meant something.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them, but I'm not well versed enough. So if anybody out there who's listening to this knows, put in the comments.
Right. We need the is it Wikipedia?
Yeah. and like I said, I've never done the research to figure it out.
Right.
I've seen the little quizzes that you take on Facebook.
Like
Figure out which color lightsaber you would be, and I'm like, this is stupid. And it's probably going to give me viruses. Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Right. No, I did like.
Unless it turns out they're legit, and then I might go find one.
Right. Oh, you know what? Speaking of that, sorry, another bunny trail. I'm just full of them today.
No, that's fine.
On Facebook, I saw this advertisement for like you could fully build a lightsaber. Have you seen that?
They have I have one sitting up here. It's just like a little cheap plastic one that I bought. But yeah, it's like metal.
Yeah,
and it still has like
parts. You just put it all together.
And then you can screw the one that's Darth Maul's. You can buy 2.
And then
2 glass tubes, and then you glue them, or not glue them, like you screw them in to each end. Yeah, those things are like $400.
Yeah, well, the detail on it was like it had 30 different individual parts that you assembled yourself, and I was like, wow, that's. First, it was really cool, but I was like, that's a little extreme for me. But
yeah, I went down a lightsaber rabbit hole on YouTube one time, and I started off with this guy who, quote unquote, made a lightsaber. What he did was he got a metal rod that had a super high melting rate.
Okay. That
you really couldn't reach.
Right.
Just making something in your garage, and then he coiled it with something else that had a really high melting rate.
Okay.
But it was slightly lower. And then he hooked like 17 car batteries to it. And no. I think he had it as a backpack. It was a backpack, and he had like a cord that went into it. And when he turned it on, you could see the heat traveling up that coil all the way to the end. And I mean, it wouldn't cut through things like a lightsaber would. Right. But it definitely got like white hot.
What color was it?
White.
Of course, you just said white hot.
But yeah, it was so much power and heat going through it, it literally hummed.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it wasn't like a whoa, whoa, but it was just like a bzzz. I'm like, you are carrying this on your back.
Yeah, that makes it. What's in the handle? What's protecting your hand here on this?
Yeah, and then so I went from there. There's another show that's really good. It's run through Nerdist.
Okay.
It's called Because Science.
Because Science. We're back at this.
Yeah. And so what he does is this dude goes through and like scientifically figures out how to do things that are done in movies. And one of them was how to make a lightsaber. And it's not how do you build it, how do you put that much energy into the handle. It's just hypothetically we have the technology.
Right.
Here's probably what's going on in the movie.
Okay.
And he goes, there's a core of power that's coming out. But if you don't want it to be just this raw, wild power that goes on for infinity like a laser, you have to contain it. So then the way you contain it is you cover that in some sort of reverse ion beam that would go around, and the ions and electrons flow the opposite way, so it contains the energy with it. And it's like
we're back to adding science words to nouns now.
Yeah, I guess. But and all of this is theoretical, right? Because you can't control any. You'd have to have something that shoots it out in a 3-dimensional pattern,
right? That
would go up a certain distance.
Yep.
Shut off whatever energy is trying to shoot through, so it'd constantly be trying to fight itself.
Right.
But yeah, it was really interesting. There's a lot of weird stuff you can find.
Yeah,
online,
of course.
So.
Especially on lightsabers, it's just a cool weapon.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to whenever he gets off of the table,
right?
Stepping just one step back.
Yep.
If Vader all out fought Palpatine,
right?
Right then,
Who would win?
Who wins?
I don't know.
Like, Vader just absolutely wants to kill Palpatine.
Right, because he's just, like, had it.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, I haven't seen Darth Vader use lightning. To me, that might be the game changer in the fight.
The way I understand it is it's just like Jedi, and they've turned the Jedi into this too. Is that they did this in the prequels, I believe. Some Jedi are really good at using the Force to wield their saber.
Right.
Some Jedi are really good at mind tricks. Other Jedi are really good at controlling creatures. But there's always that kind of... Do you ever play like Fallout or anything like that where you boost your charisma all the way up, but because you spent all of your points on charisma, you have 0 strength?
Right.
Or you have no wisdom or whatever.
You have a certain pool of attribute points, and you have to pick what to use them on.
And so, from what I understand, that's how Jedi powers work.
Okay. And so this would apply to, like, Force users in general, Sith or Jedi?
Yeah, just depending on how... And that might be part of what determines your lightsaber color.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're really good at moving things with the Force, you might not be so good at controlling people's minds.
And that seems to be Vader's emphasis then, we'll say, of the Force, is he's very... he's like overpowers you in like a physical, telekinetic way?
Yeah, Vader, if I remember his stat sheet correctly, he's really good at wielding the Force, and he's really good at using the Force in lightsaber combat.
Okay.
Not so much at adjusting people's minds and I think there was a point in the Clone Wars where he talks about, I'm no good at talking to animals.
Right. Well, and he's a pilot.
Yeah.
One of the best pilots in the galaxy, right?
Yeah. And so you have those kind of instincts.
Right.
But, yeah, I think... And it would just be like anything. I mean, some people are good at drawing. Other people are good at this.
Right.
I mean, Palpatine's just good at using lightning. I don't know... Palpatine makes it seem like it's a level that you reach where you can use it. But we also saw Count Dooku. Count Dooku could use lightning, and he went out fairly easily against Anakin, who was just still a Padawan.
I wonder if maybe part of Palpatine's thing with the Force is he can use it. I don't know what's the right word. He's crafty. He can strategically think, and that's how he's getting all this power.
Yeah, my theory is that he can mind control massively. He can do Jedi mind tricks on a mass scale. How else do you get an entire Senate made up of thousands of senators to say, you know what? We don't want power anymore. You take over.
Right. Please, you go ahead.
Yeah, nobody would ever do that.
Right.
So, I think there's a little bit of that going on.
So, like, Force delusion, if you will, or...
Maybe. He can make you see his side of the argument.
Right. And
it comes off as him being charismatic.
So it's like, it's persuasion.
Yeah, that's a good word.
He's able to persuade you to his viewpoint more easily with the Force.
And I think it comes out a lot in this Darth Vader and a lot in this Vader. The other Darth Vader series that was running was right after episode 4. No, right after episode 3.
Okay.
Death Star blows up. This Vader starts.
Okay.
And so it's in between episode 3 and 4.
Okay.
And I think you start seeing that kind of crumble a little bit in the later issues of that one.
With Palpatine?
Yeah. Because Vader finds out that Palpatine lied about Luke, and it's kind of that journey.
Right.
But, yeah, I think the only way Vader doesn't just murder him is because, one, he tells enough of the truth that it kind of covers up the lie.
Right.
But then he's also kind of pushing that Force.
Do you think Darth Vader, is... It's almost like he's so far into wherever he's going that he can't get out of the hole now?
You mean it's kind of like somebody decides to rob a bank?
Yeah. So
and then whenever they rob the bank, they might as well steal a car, and then they might as well
it just keeps going.
Yeah.
And in this case, he becomes upset at the Jedi. He turns on them. Is maybe deceived by Palpatine, and that he fosters that in him.
Yeah.
Pushes him over the edge, and now he's on this spiral because of all the pain, the anguish, the anger, the bitterness, and he's waiting for something to, wake him up.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where the whole Luke Skywalker type of idea comes in, and why he ends up, throwing Palpatine down the well.
Right.
Because it wakes him up out of whatever's going on there.
Well, and the Sith are a weird thing, too, because there's only ever two of them. And if I'm the leader, I know I'm either going to kill you in training,
right,
or you're going to murder me. And that's how it is.
Yeah, that always is kind of a weird setup.
And so it's not even that Palpatine was upset that Vader killed him, because that's what was supposed to happen.
Right.
And even saying that, well, Vader gained salvation because he killed the bad guy.
Sure.
No, he was just fulfilling. The whole point of Darth Vader was to kill Palpatine and then Luke take Vader's spot.
Right.
And so then they would work together until Luke killed Vader.
Right.
Like, that's what it was. Vader offered that to him whenever they were in Sky City.
Okay, so what's the prophecy, right, is that someone would bring balance to the Force?
Yeah, and I never understood that either.
I've always been confused by that.
Well, because the Jedi weren't balanced at all.
Right.
They were one side of an extreme, and the Sith are the other side of the extreme. I mean, if you want to really get down to it, the Sith were more balanced than the Jedi. They were just evil.
Right, manifesting in an evil way.
They made a comic about this, too, talking about the original Jedi. And they say original Jedi, but even that's still in quotes, because it starts off, there are these, like, primitive planets that are worshipping these giant pyramids on their planet that have just been there forever.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, one day, they just take off. And they start abducting all these people, and then they go to some other planet and drop them off there. Well, those were Force users. Obviously,
the people who got abducted?
The people who got abducted.
Okay.
And I might be butchering this story, but...
Sure.
And then, what happens when you put a bunch of people on a planet together is they start having kids.
Right.
And they start having kids, and these kids have emotions, and what ends up happening is once they go too far in either direction of unbalance, the whole planet starts to, like, shake and crack apart and break. Well, you had a group that said it's because of we have too much emotion.
Uh-huh.
And then you had another group that said, no, we just need to balance ourselves, and we need to embrace our emotions. Well, the Jedi were the ones that won out, and they said, what's causing us to have all of these emotions is the fact that we have families. We have wives, we have husbands, we have children. So they took all of the children who weren't Force users, put them on a ship, and sent them away. And so they tried to swallow their emotions.
Right.
And then what ended up happening is the people who didn't want to send their kids off embraced their emotions. They started fighting, and that was whenever the Jedi and Sith started their whole thing.
That's interesting. Okay.
And that's a super oversimplified version of it. But yeah, that's what started the war, essentially.
Now, how can two Sith... How can two Sith... How can there only be two Sith, but then you can have, like, thousands, if not... Maybe not that. I don't know how many Jedi. It seems like there's an overwhelming number.
It's not two Sith in, like, the entire universe. It's two Sith occupying a space at the same time. So in that galaxy, there's probably, while the Jedi are still alive,
right,
before Order 66 goes out, there's probably thousands,
right,
hundreds of thousands of Sith that would be considered Sith out in out in that galaxy right then. But whenever it comes to Palpatine, it's Palpatine and Vader. Those are the only two. Palpatine doesn't take on this guy and this guy and this guy. He doesn't start a church of Sith.
So in other words, there's a master and an apprentice, but there could be other masters and apprentices.
Oh yeah,
other places.
And you see that in Darth Vader, Volume 1 and 2 for the other one.
Okay.
Palpatine gets real pissed at Vader because he blames him for the Death Star, and so he gets a whole herd of other people, and he goes, "Yeah, these are your replacements. If you can't prove you're worthy, then one of them will take your place," which is really unheard of because that's not how it works.
Right.
Palpatine's kind of going off script there because it's supposed to be either Vader dies in training or Palpatine dies by Vader's hand.
So there could be another Sith master and apprentice pairing somewhere, but what makes this one particularly unique is
Disney made a movie about
it. And they're making more movies.
Yeah, that's what makes it so special.
But he has power, and it's on a scale of power.
He has set himself up for political power.
Okay.
Whereas the other ones might be trying to take over planet. They might not even know that they're Sith.
Right.
It might just be that, listen, I'm an evil dude and I know how to choke people with my mind.
Right.
So there's got to be a lot of that going on too. But I think the big part is you will just never have like a church of the Sith.
Right.
Whereas the Jedi would bring everybody in and they say, okay, we're going to train you guys. We're going to teach you guys. It's easier to control one person rather than control everybody.
Now, what makes me a Sith? Because I can be a Force user, right? But that doesn't make me a Jedi or a Sith necessarily.
Right. What makes you a Sith is that you give in to your emotions.
Okay.
You're governed by your emotions.
And then what would make me a Jedi is that
you've taken the vow to...
Not to...
Right.
Okay.
Which is stupid to do either.
Right.
And that's why it flies in the face of the balance of the Force. And that's why I used to be one of those people that said, I never liked Luke Skywalker.
Right.
I thought he was a pansy. All he does is whine and cry and stuff like that. But he was the balance. He had emotion, but then he was also calm and logical. He was sad that he had to kill his dad. He was afraid to kill his dad.
Right.
But he still knew that it had to be done,
right.
which sent him on his way. And so he was the true balance to the Force because he would feel emotion, but he would also control that emotion.
Right.
Instead of giving in. Instead of saying, I'm angry, and then choke everybody in a room.
Right.
Or do like Kylo Ren, where I'm angry, and then he slices up the computers. So I think that's what they're more looking for, and they say bring balance to the Force.
Okay.
But whenever you ask the Jedi Council, bring balance to the Force meant kill the Sith.
Right.
Make peace. I'm like, no, that's not balance. That's you.
Overbalancing.
Yeah, that's you putting your foot on the teeter-totter and saying you can't get on.
Good luck.
Yeah. One thing I really enjoyed about this is that the author doesn't just make this about Vader. It's called Darth Vader.
Right.
But there's a lot more going on. You have to realize that the Republic just fell.
Right.
So Palpatine's still making moves, but he is by no means like solidified as all-powerful leader.
I think one of the things I enjoyed about this issue was, I guess, how it's like, how does Darth Vader become Darth Vader in some sense?
Yeah.
And you're kind of getting a little bit more of Palpatine's like influence on him, his guidance, if you will.
Well, and once the helmet goes on, it's hard to. And this is something I think Soule does. He literally puts you in the helmet of Vader at one point.
I loved that. Was one of my favorite, I guess, panels.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at one now. It's
where they're dropping the helmet on.
Yeah, dropping the helmet on him. Phil Noto, Noto. Yeah, and I just loved how you get the shots. It's looking through his eyes, you know. So,
yeah.
And it's the colored screen, the
right,
colored
the
glass.
filters.
Yeah. And I thought that was so cool, so unique.
Yeah, and so what I think they do a really good job of is pulling you back in and saying, yes, this is Darth Vader.
Right.
But he's not just a machine. He's still Anakin.
Right.
And they do a really good job of reminding you constantly.
Yes.
This is still Anakin. This is still how old was he in episode 3?
Right. He's the tinkerer.
Yeah.
He's the racer or the pilot, you know.
Yeah.
And they pull all of those things into this issue. I don't know how I haven't read the other issues, but if it's like this where they keep reminding you of those particular attributes of Anakin, but transformed into Darth Vader now.
Yeah,
that would be really cool.
And once you get into the other Vader story, he's more Vader.
Okay.
But in this one's been going on for, I want to say, like 30, 40 issues.
Okay.
I mean, it's been going on for a long time. And he's still, at times, Anakin Skywalker peeks through.
Like, let's see. There's a scene that I really enjoyed. I think it's near the end in this issue. He's in the chamber after a battle. He's in the tank, and Palpatine's like, "Oh, I'll have the droid will repair everything," and then he's like,
"Nope."
Yeah. And then all these parts start coming together, and he's like redesigning the armor, and I was just like, "Oh, that's pretty cool."
Yeah, and I've never considered that. Okay, so in Iron Man, every time they make a new Iron Man movie, or every time he shows up in a new movie, he's got the Mark V or the Mark VI or the Mark VII. Right. I never considered that with Vader.
Me neither. Yeah.
He's mostly robot, so why wouldn't it be like, you know what? This knee keeps clicking on me, so let's go ahead and change that out.
And you saw that too. He has the battle with what's the Jedi's name in this one?
Oh yeah, I can't remember what the dude's name is. The guy that's all secluded on the.
Yeah, he looks like a stone. He looks like Stone Man too.
Yeah,
he's got gray skin and. Oh, I can't find his name now.
Yeah, again, I always made the mistake of reading this and making my notes well before I have you guys read it. So this is what happens when that goes on. And then in my notes, for some reason, I never write down what the guy's name is. Right. So I just write.
Right, just assume. Yeah.
I just write down my thoughts.
But when he was in that battle with him, he, what does he destroy one of his legs and crumbles his arm,
and
something.
Then he disassembles the robot and rebuilds it.
I was like, that was brilliant. I loved that. It was so cool.
So one question I've always had was, how do you create a movie, a book, a comic book, any sort of story where Vader is the main character? How do you do that and make people relate to him?
Man, they evidently did a good job in this one because I really enjoyed it.
Right.
So, was it Soule?
Yeah.
Is he the script writer for this?
He's the
artist?
Author. So
author. Okay.
The way I think it works with comics is, at least this is how whenever me and my buddy are writing our comics. By the way, shameless plug, Magnus the Brave. I wrote it. Chris Rao helped create it, storyboard it. He did all the art. I did most of the writing. The way we did it was, I outlined it.
Right.
I want this to happen, this to happen, this to happen, this to happen. We refine that a little bit. I would create some sort of thumbnail where I would do a really shitty drawing of like what I wanted to happen. Mm-hmm. So then Chris goes through, he sketches it out. As he sketches out, we're reforming.
Right.
Not all my thumbnails make it to Final Cut. We adjust, we change. Then we start working on, once he gets that final image inked, then we can start working on dialogue.
Okay.
And the dialogue for this inked page will influence the sketch of the next inked page.
Got it.
And it might change. It might. So it's kind of an ever flowing.
Right.
And I don't know if that's how they do it. I would assume that each person does it differently.
Yeah.
I was reading something going back to Invincible. Robert Kirkman wrote this, and Ryan Otley did the work for the majority of it. And Ryan Otley got a script, and then in the script there's just a big open panel.
Okay.
And instead of, writing down exactly what he wants in that panel, it just said, "Fight happens." And so Ryan Otley,
Insert fight.
Ryan Otley took a picture of it and put it on Instagram and said, "When your author trusts you extensively," or something like that. So yeah, I think it just kind of happens that way.
All right, so go back to your question here about how do you make a comic about Vader, but also make him relatable.
Yeah.
Because I think if I'm understanding, when people saw the first film, that was one of the things that Vader was like this evil dude.
Right.
He doesn't strike me that way, in hindsight watching those movies from nowadays. I think that's just because we have an inundation of these like gritty, dark movies.
Yeah,
and
like
themes.
The Sopranos,
Right.
Boardwalk Empire, all of those are based on bad dude Dexter.
Right.
Bad dudes being the lead.
Right. Whereas I think Vader, was filling this void to some degree when the movie came out. And so, yeah, taking that and then trying to humanize him now in a comic, I think that would be super challenging.
One, keep in mind, maybe a month has gone by since he slaughtered a bunch of kids.
Right.
A building full of children.
Right.
He just slaughtered them.
Hello, Master Anakin.
Yeah. Yeah, what are you doing? What's going on?
What's happening?
Yeah, you get the cutest kid in there. What's going on? So he just did that.
Right.
And now you're trying to make us care about him.
Well, I think what they did so well in this issue was you can tell he's just angry and the pain. I keep saying anger, but it really comes down to this pain. But that bleeds through really well in this issue, I think that adds this really deep human element to it, because pain is a very relatable. Everyone experiences tragic, painful things, and in this particular instance, it's partly his own making. And
he was also highly manipulated.
It's true.
He was told he could save Padme. He could save his children. He was told he could do all that, knowing full well that he couldn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know that he's accepted, but he also still thinks that he killed Padme. Because remember, Palpatine tells him, "You killed her. You can't save her because you killed her. You choked her and she died." And so he's still dealing with that too. That he's
I guess I had to put that together.
These visions that he was having of Padme dying. Even though they're of her dying during childbirth,
he thinks it's
he choked her.
He
choked her, and then he didn't see her again, and all of a sudden she was dead. And he was like, "No, you did this. You killed her."
Wow, that just makes, maybe that's another play to make you feel the humanness of Vader is making him seem so much less bad in comparison or in contrast to Palpatine.
There's still a bigger bad.
Yeah.
Could be. I mean, that's kind of how all those shows that I had mentioned were Boardwalk Empire. There's always a bigger bad. He's doing it for a reason.
Right.
He's got his reasons.
Right.
He's doing bad things, but it's for the betterment of. Could be. So one thing I also always thought, especially in like the Jedi battles, like when they're fighting each other, why don't they use the Force more?
I'm always wondering the same
why
thing.
would I get in a lightsaber battle with you when I can just go?
Okay, so that was one of my like quandaries with this issue though was so you have him waking up battling Palpatine, right? Not really using lightsabers at all in that skirmish, if you will. And then the next kind of thing that happens is he gets off this ship on this planet and he proceeds to destroy 10, 15 guys.
Yeah, he threw that guy off a cliff.
Yeah. And I'm like, he has no lightsaber. He's just flying around, throwing stuff, killing people,
right.
And I'm like, and then the next thing is he's battling this Jedi, and I'm like, well, why isn't he doing?
Well, and it's also been established that weight and mass have no bearing when you're using the Force.
Right.
So to lift up a table is the same as to lift up a boulder.
Right. So you're not using more energy, so to speak.
Right.
Or draining myself.
Yeah.
The bigger the item is.
Yeah. So what I don't understand, there's a scene in this other Vader that I'm reading where a ship's taking off and he throws a lightsaber at it.
Right.
Sends it with the Force, blows up the engine, and then brings it back. Why wouldn't he just slam it down?
Right. Why not just pull the ship back?
Or rip the engines off?
Right.
I mean, okay, so I can get, if it's attached to something,
right,
it might be more difficult to
rip.
But you could still just just say, nope, you're not taking off, and set it back down.
We have to factor in this whole, attributes of the Force type of...
It could be, but Vader has proven himself as a very good wielder of the Force.
Right.
I mean, he can affect things from far away. He can choke people. He can throw people off of mountains. I mean, it's until I see a stat sheet, like an official canon stat sheet
from Disney that is,
his biggest attributes are his instincts, his lightsaber ability, and his Force wielding.
Right.
Now he can't access lightning, but I've seen him rip things down with the Force, and it's just weird that it's not used more. I'm losing in a lightsaber battle, I go boom like that.
Forget this. Let's
yeah. Right. Even if you're not a strong Force wielder, I can push you. It doesn't take any strength to push somebody.
Right. So, okay, this brings up something then. If we're having a lightsaber battle, right, and we both decide to use the Force, can my Force counter your Force? Like, is there... Yeah,
I would think that's when the skill sheet comes out.
Okay.
That's when your Dungeon Master skill sheet comes out, and whoever's the strongest, it's like arm wrestling.
Right.
Now, maybe while you're using a lightsaber, maybe you just always have that Force bubble up, and so if anybody did try to push you, you're always kind of defending against it. Maybe. I don't have the Force, so I don't know. I wasn't trained as a Jedi. I didn't receive my Jedi training yet.
A Sith?
So no, they haven't found me yet.
They haven't found you yet.
I can't afford the bus ride over to the temple. We don't have one in Wichita.
Unfortunately.
They got ran out by the Scientologists.
That's right. Bought out by Christian.
And my e-readings aren't that high, so... Metachlorians through the roof. E-readings, not so much. So, issue 2 opens up, and you have these stormtroopers that are just, sorting through stuff.
Right.
They're complaining that their jobs are over. They don't have any jobs. So, it's interesting how they insert little pieces. Because you never think about that. What are you going to do with all those clones? You have millions of clones. What are you going to do with them? I mean, they can't be the police. I guess they kind of can be. Is that what you're using them for?
Yeah, they kind of are using them that way.
That's an expensive police force, though.
That's how they portray them in a lot of the movies. Is they're like glorified police in some ways.
So with this whole we're out of the job thing. Okay, so this happens how many years before? 18 years before Episode 4 happens?
Okay.
Is that when you would put this, maybe?
Sure, I'm not really sure on the
18,
time.
19. Well, Luke's just been born.
Okay, right.
He was just born whenever this volume started.
So, how old is he in episode 4?
20-ish?
25, somewhere in
Early
there.
20s.
I guess he acts kind of more like a teen.
I'd say 19 to 20.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good guess.
So, in the 19 to 20 years
right.
that everything's been going on, does this explain why the stormtroopers are so terrible at shooting? Because they haven't had anything to shoot at for 20 years?
I don't know. That's a great... I liked your explanation there, though.
Because they specifically made pages, like 2 or 3 pages about them complaining about not having a job anymore. And how they're going to get shoved on some planet out in the middle of nowhere.
They need something to do, and unfortunately they just get shoved off in the corner. Yeah, I mean, I think that makes good sense.
I mean, they were much better shots when they were fighting with the Jedi.
Right.
And now they're not.
And now they're off in the far reaches of the galaxy.
Yeah. Although, once they stopped using clones, and they went to just abducting children in The Force Awakens.
Right.
They got real good.
Right.
They were pretty good shots in The Force Awakens.
Okay, so what happens to all these clones? Do they just stop making clones and then they need to start recruiting people? Because in the Solo movie, they're like trying to recruit people from planets.
Yeah, obviously the Clone Wars is whenever you find out that they've been raising clones.
Right.
And I think they explained it to Obi-Wan that whenever they come out of their pods, they're children. They age rapidly to a point, and then they age normally. And judging by what Jango Fett looked, I'd say he was about 35 or 40.
Right.
So they rapidly age to a certain point, and not just age physically, but they're super... I mean, I don't say super smart.
Right.
They catch up to where their clone was pretty quick.
So you think they just aged out?
I mean, I would assume they all died.
But can't you just produce another generation of them?
It would come to... I mean, they never cover the economics of it, but I would think it'd be very expensive to clone somebody when you can just go to a planet and say, yep, these kids are ours now.
Now that you're in control and in power, you can just take everybody.
Or, I mean, just like in Solo.
Right.
I mean, we do it now with our army.
Right.
You walk into a high school, you get all these kids who are 16 to 18 years old who don't know what direction they want to take in their life, and you say, hey, the army is going to be a great way for you. We'll put you to work. You can find out what you like.
Right.
We'll pay for your college. If you don't figure out what you want while you're with us, we'll pay for your college
later,
once you leave.
Yeah.
So,
I'm laughing.
I mean, I don't know what the package is for being a stormtrooper.
I'm laughing because in the Solo movie, he like signs up and he's like, I'm gonna be a pilot, and then like the next scene it flashes to him on the battlefield. He's like, what am I doing? Like, and then the guy's like, all right, we're almost to the objective, and he goes, what objective? What's the point? What are we doing here? And then he gets, of course, the guy gets blown up in the next frame. Anyway, that's quite funny.
Okay, I know a lot of people shit on Solo. I liked it.
You know, I didn't know what to expect from it.
For me, the guy who played Solo, I think as far as looking like him, I think they could have cast better.
Right.
As far as acting like him, he acts just like Solo. Yeah. And I'm going to catch a lot of shit for this, of like my few friends that are going to listen to this. But I mean, he's cocky, he's arrogant.
Right.
He does stuff without thinking. He's just going to say, I'm just going to do it, and it's going to turn out good because I'm Han Solo.
Right.
The thing that turned me off, I didn't like Lando at first. I mean, I love Donald Glover, and I like almost all the stuff he does. It's almost like he went in and said, okay, for the first 4 times you see me, I'm going to really overdo it.
Right.
So that you know I'm Lando. Like, we could go through this movie without them saying who I am, but you're going to know who I am just by the way I act. And I think he just overdid it, but then you can tell he kind of settled into it.
Right, yeah.
And I say that as you're watching the movie, knowing that they shoot movies backwards. so it might have been by the end of shooting, he was like, screw this.
I'm doing what I want.
I'm gonna go balls out. I don't want to be here anymore. But I don't know. It seemed at first when you met Lando, he was too Lando. And that could have been that could have just been a facade he was putting on because he was in front of all of his friends at the whatever table,
right?
Whatever game they were playing.
I'm trying to recall how he struck me when I first saw him. He was almost too. I'm trying to then compare him to the Sky City scenes of Lando. He was almost too. He's almost too cocky. You know, in the Solo movie, that when you first meet him,
yeah,
because he seems more cool and collected in the original version of.
He
Lando.
owns Sky City. Why would he be?
Okay, fair enough. He's worked his way in.
You own a city. Didn't he win Sky City?
Well, that wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah, I think he won it.
Did he cheat for it, or is he
probably
legitimate?
I mean, if we've learned anything, it's that he cheats.
The definition of Lando.
But yeah, for it being what it was, it doesn't add anything to the story.
Right.
It kind of fills you in on a couple of things,
yes.
But it doesn't forward the story any. I thought it was an amazing movie, just fun.
I loved the train robbing, if you will, scene.
I think a lot of people look to these movies and they're like, no, it needs to be like Oscar nominated. And they don't even realize that the Oscar nominations have nothing to do with how good a movie is.
Right.
It's whether these 5 people liked it.
Yeah.
And a great representation of that is Venom. Venom got like a 90 from everybody who went and watched it, except for the critics who gave it like a 30. And so I'm like, you can't listen to critics. Just go to a movie, and if you like it, you like it. I hate it when people are like, yeah, it sucks. The critics thought it sucked too. I'm like, did you go and watch it thinking it was going to suck?
Right.
So I don't know. I think that's what happens to a lot of movies, especially in like Star Wars. Plus, Star Wars has been so big.
It's hyped up, yeah.
It's so big. Everybody expects it to be a masterpiece. And it can be just a good movie.
Something I've enjoyed about what they're doing with the Star Wars, I don't know if we should call them spin-off movies, like Rogue One or even Solo. Like, it seems like they're really trying to give new actors, or people you probably haven't heard of much.
Yeah, people not in Star Wars.
Yeah, a chance to show us what they got. And I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, that's what they did with the originals.
Yep.
I mean, other than Solo, Star Wars came out before Indiana Jones. So, I mean, that kind of launched his career.
Right.
I mean, there was really... I don't know any actors from back then other than...
I don't either. I'm terrible at actors.
I'm sure there were big actors in them, but yeah, it was... I don't know. So back to the Stormtroopers.
Sure, yeah.
When Vader came in... Why did he come in like guns blazing, killing all of them when he could have just landed?
I couldn't figure that out either.
His robot even says, "You have the codes.
Right.
Why don't you just use them?" No, I'm good.
No, yeah,
I'm good.
I thought that was so confusing to me too. I mean, don't get me wrong. I loved the battle scene where he's fighting them all. In the comic relief bit, with the Stormtroopers interaction was great. But I felt. They felt out of sync in some ways, I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost like Vader says, you know what? I have to kill somebody now.
Right.
And so he does.
He's like,
I'm not answering to you guys. So he just goes in and kills them. So for me, it's always been interesting, like how people in this one in particular, but also in the future episodes and the future comics and the future movies, how people react to Vader. They treat him with zero respect.
Right.
But then I have to remind myself that, like, no one knows who he is. No one knows that he used to be Anakin. No one knows what he went through. Nobody knows what he came with. He was just there one day, and all of a sudden, now he's bossing you around.
Right.
Like, you don't know who he is.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah, which
explains...
explains...
you can force choke. Okay, well, never mind.
Which explains why he force chokes a lot of people. It's just... It's one of those things, and they do a really good job in the comics of reminding you that.
Right.
Of... Yes, he kind of has a reputation later, but right now in this comic...
He's a nobody.
Yeah, nobody knows who he is.
Yeah.
So maybe he killed those dudes just to build his reputation.
Yeah, that's a good... I like that angle. I hadn't really thought about it that way. But that would make sense, too, because then... Does he let one of them go? No.
I don't know. I think he just kills as many as are around. I don't think he's, like, hunting them down.
Right.
But anybody in the immediate vicinity is dead.
You're all dead.
Yeah. Okay, so... What are your thoughts on the Way of the Jedi? I know we talked about it a little bit, but what are your thoughts on it?
You mean like how the Jedi function? Or...
Yeah. Just, they reference the Way of the Jedi. It's the Way of the Jedi to do this. It's the Way of the Jedi to...
I kind of felt like... Maybe this is going in a direction you weren't intending, but I feel like the newest movies, like... Jedi and Sith was clear cut, right?
Yeah.
In the previous films. But the newest iteration of the trilogy, Force Awakens and Last Jedi, tend to make it a lot more gray. Like, there's this huge gradient within how Jedi think and function and what they're actually wanting to do. It's
funny that you use that terminology. There's actually a gray order of the Jedi.
Well, what is their purpose?
I don't know. I just know that it was in the comics and that it was referenced in, I think, the Clone Wars, maybe.
Okay.
But they talk about it, and I think it is one of those. It's one of those groups that's not accepted by the Order of the Jedi because they are more balanced.
So they're more okay with emotion?
Yeah, so imagine...
Attachment?
Okay, so imagine the Sith would be atheists.
Okay.
And the Jedi would be the Catholic Church.
Sure.
These are people who are like, you know what? We'll do a lot of the things that the Catholic Church does, but we're also not going to ignore these people over here for whatever reason without getting too religious and offending anybody. I mean, the super strict Christians versus the not at all.
Right.
And these people are going to fall right in between. And I think that's where they are.
Kind of how their function within this spectrum there.
You can be militant either way.
Right.
But then the majority of everybody lives in this little sphere right in the middle
somewhere. Yeah.
And so these guys probably did cuss when they stubbed their toe, and they probably did cry when they saw a sad movie, but they also had wives and husbands and children. And so, we talk about the Force Awakens and the Last Jedi, and you see that scene where the kid just like pulls the broom over to him in the Last Jedi, and it makes sense because of what we were talking about. There's gotta be Jedi. There's no way they killed all the Jedi.
Right.
And okay, they may have killed all the Jedi. They may not have killed... There's no way they killed all the Force users.
Right.
And they kind of touch on it later in here, that there's like this whole... Not in this volume.
Right.
But there's a whole database of known Force users.
Right.
And so, it's... They make it seem like in the movies that all the Force wielders were killed out. But the comics say, no. There's no way. That would be like Hitler saying, yeah, we actually killed all the Jews.
Right.
There's no way you killed everybody who has any Jewish blood in them.
Right.
I mean, they didn't have the 23andMe back then.
And they keep in the Imperial War Machine, they keep a Jedi alive so that Vader can... What is he? he has taken a vow. Or
Yeah, the Barash.
That's right.
The vow of the Barash.
Yeah.
Which means he did something terrible.
Okay.
So then he has to separate himself from all of his other people and just focus on the Force.
Okay.
And from what they explain in here is, so I'm just a regular Jedi, and I need to go in and knock some heads. I call in this guy. This guy loves to fight. He loves to kill people.
Right.
He loves to do it, but he's also a Jedi.
Right.
So it's almost like they said, okay, we know you're actually a Sith.
Right.
But we're going to raise you from the time you're a child. You have these violent tendencies, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
We're going to raise you. It's almost like the opposite of Vader. Vader loved to be in his emotions, loved to be in his feelings, I don't want to say loved to kill people, but he does now.
Right.
He enjoys killing. He'll kill anybody.
Yeah.
Just because. And one of the Vaders I just read, he killed somebody because they designed his palace wrong. And so, like, he goes through and he has no problem killing people.
Right.
This guy who's doing the Barash has no problem killing people. But it's like they kept him around because they needed muscle.
Right.
Which has always been my big thing with the Jedi also, is because they want to follow a certain way when it's convenient.
Right.
Which is kind of it's definitely a commentary on politics and religion of today. Right. But, you want to follow your beliefs until it's inconvenient to follow your beliefs, and then you'll just do whatever you want to do,
right,
while still pushing your beliefs on everybody else.
Right.
So I think it's very well done, though.
Yeah, I think so.
And so the Jedi have made this kid, which he's not a kid anymore,
right,
but they made him into somebody who was constantly fighting his emotions and nature, because they told him, you're evil because you feel like this, but then they would send him out to do things that he was feeling.
So then he's put in this position of having to take this vow.
Yeah.
To atone for it, if you will.
Right. Yeah, it's...
I didn't know much about the vow and how that worked.
Well, I knew from just what they say on here, is that all he says was, I did something terrible in my past. They never explained what it was.
But then, so he feels like he's waiting for a moment to fulfill his vow, though, because that's kind of how I was reading it. Like and then he sensed that this was the moment. Fighting Vader was the moment.
Right. Yeah. Why wasn't it 5 minutes earlier before Vader got there? But it's one of those things where he's bought into it so much,
right,
that this is the universe saying, okay, your time's done, fight this guy,
right,
to prove that you've done whatever you need to. So going into issue 3, what's the point of secluding yourself like this? Like, what good does that do to, I've done something terrible, so I'm going to go live on a mountain for who knows?
Well, and the funny thing is, he acts like he knows the people on the planet, because there's like this mechanic lady and her daughter that are in the scenes. And then there's all these like Jedi traps or something as well. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, going up the mountain?
Yeah, because Vader has to work through all these traps.
Right.
So I don't know, it's kind of a weird, it's like he's in seclusion, but it's not seclusion. It's like a secret base, and then
he's secluded from all of his brothers.
Yeah, okay, true.
So I'd be like, I'm gonna seclude myself, and I'm just gonna move to rural Iowa,
right?
And I'm gonna live out in the country,
right?
But if I need to, I can still go to town,
right? Maybe I liked your idea there. The one you were just talking about, being raised up as a kid, having these tendencies suppressed by the Jedi. So maybe that angle explains why he's seeking solitude to some degree.
but
away from the other Jedi.
It seems like that was kind of the whole point of the Barash.
Was the seclusion?
Yeah, like you have to cut yourself off from all other Force wielders.
So is that to be more in sync with the Force then?
I don't know. They talk about penance.
Uh-huh.
And the thing is, though, they wanted him... and again, we don't know what he did.
Right.
I mean, maybe he killed a temple full of children. I don't know.
This is sounding oddly familiar.
All it says is that he did something terrible.
Right.
And so maybe what he did was more terrible than what he had done before. Like, whenever he would go in... Because if it's sanctioned by the Jedi Order, then it can't be terrible. Right? I mean, so maybe he just called him out on it, and he killed another Jedi because they wanted him to do something that was terrible. I don't know.
I don't know either. Maybe he gave in to his emotion side, and that's part of having to seclude himself so that he's not tempted to go back that.
One part of his thing too is that he chose like the difficult path. And so my notes that I wrote down, I wrote, just because you chose the difficult path does not mean it's the correct one.
Right.
And a lot of people, I think, get hung up on that. It was like, well, I chose the path less traveled. It doesn't mean it was right. It just means that you get to bitch and moan about it.
Right.
And we all have to listen to
it. And now we all have to listen to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you chose to seclude yourself, and then you felt all the Jedi die, so you could have at that point be like, all right, whatever.
Right. Who am I accountable to now, right? Like, everybody's dead.
Right. You chose to seclude yourself because you're an idiot.
I guess to me that it's more along the penance line, of I don't know, feeling terrible and I don't know.
So they end up getting in this fight.
Right.
This dude, I can't remember what his name is for the life of me. But they get in this fight, and then he force pushes Vader off of him.
Right.
So what does that say about his skill set?
I mean, it's pretty evident from the fight that he's I would consider him very similar to Vader. He can use the Force. He can manipulate objects really well. He's skilled. Oh,
that was one of my favorite lines. Whenever Vader's coming, this is going back a few.
Right.
But when Vader's coming in, his little robot AI was like, proximity alert. And he goes, what is it? He goes, it would appear to be, for lack of a better word, art. And he just flung all those Jedi, like...
The symbol
the pieces of metal that he was messing with. Just flung those at Vader. So yeah, this guy's pretty strong. And keep in mind, again, I have to constantly remind myself that this is baby Vader.
Right.
This isn't Empire Vader. This is baby Vader. And so I know he's not going to be that strong, but still, it's Vader.
Right. Okay, Master Infila. Infila. INFIL apostrophe A.
Infila.
Infila.
We'll call him that. So.
Oh, and what's okay for people listening? He's got these big red, like an X mark across his chest. Do we know what that's about?
He's an X-Man.
Disney crossover.
Yeah. Okay, so I go to all these Comic-Cons, and this guy named Cullen Bunn, he's going to be at Air Capital Comic-Con.
Okay.
But he always goes to the Kansas City ones.
Uh-huh.
I was talking to him about the Darth Maul comics, because he made a run of Darth Maul.
All right.
And I was telling him how much I liked it, and how it kind of started off slow, but it really picked up, and it's a good story and stuff.
Right.
He also wrote a line of comics called Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe.
Okay.
And he was like, I've been pitching this idea to Marvel for the past 5 years, ever since Star Wars and Marvel and the same thing. He goes, I've been pitching this idea of Deadpool kills the Star Wars universe. He was like, they won't let me do it. So he's got like a whole script and everything written out for Deadpool kills the Star Wars universe.
I like that.
Yeah, they'll let Deadpool kill the Marvel universe twice,
right?
But they
not,
won't let him
don't
kill
touch Star Wars.
They said the two cannot ever cross. I'm like, but it wouldn't be like canon. Like nobody would take this as like, well, how does Deadpool fit into? I mean, it's a Christmas issue, right? I mean, Christmas issues don't ever count for anything. Okay, so let's relate the Force to religion.
Okay,
we're gonna get a little dangerous here. So it seems with the Jedi that religion has gotten in the way of God.
Sure.
So, what is if the author's trying to say anything? What is he trying to say here? Is he trying to make a commentary on anything?
I don't know. We've got the Jedi. I don't know. I guess I'm thinking back to Anakin killing off all the Jedi, and then you got Order 66. Mm-hmm. But I can see that being more of a commentary on like this very traditional order or way of doing things, and they're trying to, if you will, impose it on everyone. I think I didn't really make those parallels as much in this particular issue. Mm-hmm. But the vow and the penance thing's really interesting. I think that might be...
So what brings this up for me is that Infala,
mm-hmm.
he was so worried about his religious duties.
Right.
He had to do the Barash. He did something terrible.
Right.
Have to do the Barash. He felt all the other Jedi dying.
Right.
And yet he didn't leave because of his religious duties.
Yeah,
So it's almost like a church saying, we're going to worry so much about our church,
right,
that we're not going to worry about our congregation outside of the church because we're so worried about
this. It's almost being too self-focused or too oriented on your small grouping of people that you forget about the larger context of the larger community.
It might not even be a small group of people. He's so worried about it. Like I said, it'd almost be like they're so worried about the building.
Mm-hmm.
We're so worried about we have to build the building, we have to build this, we have to build it out, we have to grow, we have to expand. But then something happens with somebody in the congregation. No.
Right.
Congregate, we can't worry about that person in the hospital. Right. We can't worry about this person who needs some food. We can't worry about
fulfill this thing.
I have to do this. And that's exactly what Infala did is, no, I'm on Barash. I can't go help all these people being slaughtered.
Right.
Because I have to do this. Even though if the church crumbles and there are no people to fill the church, then there is no church. If there are no Jedi, then there is no Barash.
Right.
It's kind of like, why is he still secluded when there's nobody holding him in seclusion?
So I guess that brings up for me, like, is the idea of a Jedi still, even if they're all dead, and he's still the only one, he's in Barash, and he's holding himself to that standard, or that code he sworn promise, whatever you're calling it.
Right.
That vow. Is he still embodying the Jedi then? Like, is that making sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's still Jedi, and so by doing this duty, he's still
I don't know.
Jedi.
Does he just want to be like the last Mohican?
Right.
Is that what it is?
He's the last man standing.
Right. Or does he think that it's going to spring forth from him? I mean, he can't reproduce. He's a Jedi.
Right.
So
now he has to go change the rules for being a Jedi.
Which is also another thing of, if Jedi can't reproduce, how do you keep having other Jedi unless the Force just springs up? Right, but then why did they think Order 66 would take care of the Jedi problem?
Right. Which then brings you back to the movies, right? The most recent movie where the kid has the broom and you're like, well, the Force is everywhere and awakening.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Also, he is Jedi, but he also shows pride. He shows arrogance. He shows anger, disgust. I mean, he shows all these emotions, and he's full of all these emotions. So, I mean, he's kind of Sith.
Right.
And he gives in to him. That's the thing.
Maybe the vow, is it Barash?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe you have to say it more like Middle Eastern.
Barash.
Barash.
Barash. Maybe he's holding so strongly to the vow because it's what he believes is keeping him in check.
Right.
From going to this dangerous place again, which could result in who knows what.
So Vader's lying down at the bottom of this mountain.
Right.
At this point in time, what are your thoughts about Vader? Any surprises? Anything good? Anything bad? What do you think of Vader?
Excuse me. I found it surprising that I don't know, I thought he would have lasted a little longer.
Yeah.
Because he progresses up the mountain and kind of defeats all the traps and things fairly easily. Then he gets to the top and they have a little duel or whatever, and then he just boom gets thrown off.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what happened to all this other like build up? It was like the build up didn't match the.
Maybe that was the point, though.
I don't know.
Maybe that was the point, is to show that he's very strong-willed.
Right.
Anakin has always been strong-willed. He's going to plow through, but then when met with something that he couldn't actually handle, he flies off a cliff.
But then he has the brilliant recovery because he fixes himself. He repairs himself from the droid parts, which
is also very Anakin.
Yes, and I really liked that part. Mm-hmm. I thought it was quite very neat how it's almost like you rushed into battle, you got defeated, you realized what the problem was, you rebuilt, you regrouped, now you're actually ready to go fight.
And we do see a more calculating Vader at this point.
Right.
Instead of hitting him head on because he knows he can't win head on.
Right.
And Infila thinks that he's dead.
Right.
So he goes to see this other family. He goes, I need my ship. I'm out of Barash. We're ready to go. I'm going to leave. And then Vader goes up and he's like, either you come up here and you surrender, or I'm going to break this dam and I'm going to kill everybody.
Right. Yeah. The coldness of the calculation.
Right.
Is the cunningness.
Yeah. So,
and that always seems to be the weakness of the Jedi in the movies to me.
It's the weakness of every hero and everything. It's that they can't comprehend how evil somebody evil can be.
Right.
It's that, well, why would they ever even think to attack the dam? I'm right here. So it's almost like an arrogance of, I'm the big thing that they would be attracted to. I'm the magnet. So they would attack me, not everybody else.
Which seems silly, though. Right? Because everybody knows, like, you don't just fight the guy, right? You can do 100 other things to make it so much more difficult for him.
Yeah. So does that mean, following that line of thinking, is having a moral base, having moral values, does that make you weak?
That's a good, nice philosophical question. I suppose it's important to have some type of grounding.
But Vader doesn't. He wrecks the world.
True. But then there's this aspect of, like, he has a lot of pain because he's doing that, though.
Yeah, okay, so if you're not going to have any morals, chances are you're going to be miserable every day of your life. So you can have morals and have that weakness.
Right.
But then still enjoy life. Right. Or you can have a sucky life.
with no moral
and very few weaknesses. you're not going to have any hang-ups when this guy over here gets taken hostage.
You're like, yeah, just kill him. It's fine.
So, after he captures Infila, why does Vader still kill all those people?
You know, I kind of was... A part of me didn't want him to.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like he's being set up as like... I don't know. It's weird now that I'm actually expressing it out loud. It's like he's set up as like a hero, right?
Well, the thing is, we know how it ends.
Right.
Again, we know how it ends. We know he kills an entire planet.
Right.
We know he kills all these people. We know he wants to take everything. We know that he wants to kill... Well, he wants Luke Skywalker to fall in line with them. But we also know that he would kill Luke...
Exactly.
...in a second. Like, we've seen the ending of Vader.
Yeah.
And yet, the entire time you read this, you're like, no, he wouldn't do that.
I know, right?
He blew up a planet.
Isn't that what we were just talking about with the hero idea? Where
Yeah.
it's like, oh wait, no, I'm the guy. Come fight me. And then here we are reading the comic. We're like, no, you wouldn't blow the dam up.
Why'd you
kill
do
everybody,
that?
would you?
Why'd you do that? Well, because evil does evil.
Right, exactly.
That's just how it works. And so you will, in the coming issues, you find yourself doing that non-stop. And then what they really do is in this one right here, the other one that starts off after episode 4, they do other things, and you're like, oh, maybe he's like changing. Maybe because there's like another character, and you're like, maybe there's like a connection here, and he's like connecting with this person and bonding with this person.
So it's changing how he...
Yeah, right up until he kills him. I'm like, holy crap! They trick you in, and again.
And how many issues did they spend building that relationship?
Yeah, like 4 volumes,
Wow.
and each volume is 6 issues long. So like, what's that? 24?
Yeah,
24 issues. And so you're like, what the hell's going on?
Like who?
And then you have to remember.
Safe?
Yeah, and then you have to remember. Oh yeah, it's Vader.
Yeah, it's Vader.
Yeah. Don't be an idiot. We all watched. We all watched Rogue One.
We know how this ends.
Yeah. Why? But that it just goes into how good the writing is. That it gets you. It draws you in. With this, you wanted Vader to win.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
Against the Jedi, you wanted him to win.
Yeah. You wanted him to win. You didn't want him to blow the dam, but you weren't surprised when he did.
Yeah. After he did it, you're like, oh
yeah,
it's Vader.
Well,
it's Vader. I forgot. Yeah.
Well, so the surprising part is not that he did it; it's that you fell for him not wanting to, or not wanting him to.
That's the crazy thing about these comics is most stories, they'll have a twist ending.
Right.
Like The Sixth Sense. Spoiler alert. I see dead people. Bruce Willis is dead. Spoiler. Okay, don't freak out. It's been out forever. But yeah, that's the twist ending. But with this, the ending happens whenever you step outside. You think like, yeah, he has to.
Right.
Why wouldn't Vader blow the dam? So it's a very predictable ending.
Right.
The twist on it is that you are so devastated because you didn't want him to do it. And the fact that you got drawn in so much that you thought he wouldn't.
Right. It's like appealing to your... It's like appealing to that whole, like, there's a determined outcome here.
Yeah.
But you still get choices to get there.
Right.
You know, and in some sense you're like, oh, you don't have to do that this time, you know?
Except he does.
Except he keeps doing it.
Okay, so in issue 5, we find out that Mustafar is a dark side hotspot.
Okay. And this is where the, what do you call it? There's all the lava in episode
this
3.
is where he gets burned up.
Right.
So they kind of touched on it in The Last Jedi.
Okay.
That there are places in the universe that are hotspots. That island that Luke was on had a hotspot for the dark side. Mustafar, they've established, is a spot for the dark side. So what are your thoughts on the evolution of the Force throughout the movies and the comics?
I guess, they keep throwing things in like this. That you're doing a hotspot thing.
Yeah.
But I've always been under the impression the Force is an abstract thing, right? It doesn't have...
Yeah.
It doesn't have a side. It's a thing, right? It's neutral.
It's a tool.
It's a tool, yes.
Yeah.
And so, how do you get a hotspot? Did a bunch of people, collect themselves on Mustafar, and then they
do something terrible?
Did something terrible, and now it's this portal or
it's the Amityville horror of planets.
There you go.
Yeah, it's weird that they wouldn't choose somewhere more hospitable either.
Right.
Like, I wonder if you ever see a garden with a dark side hotspot.
A beautiful garden.
And then just a hole. So, okay, so is it a living thing? I mean,
the Force or the... See, this is what's confusing about it. It's the Force,
okay.
And then there's the dark side.
But there's the Force, and then there's midichlorians. Do the midichlorians just exude Force?
Oh gosh, now you made it even worse, because I'm
Is the
what
Force,
are midichlorians?
Is the Force like midichlorian excrement?
Maybe they're the little tiny atom organisms that channel the Force.
So if Anakin would have had... Well, I guess he kind of did. Never mind. Okay. So my question was going to be, if Anakin had unprotected sex with Padme, which he clearly did, he did give the Force to Padme.
All right.
It's herpes. It's herpes. Pass it on to his children. It's herpes. Figured it out. Moving on.
Moving on.
Okay, so whenever because he goes to Mustafar because he has the Kyber crystal now.
Right.
And he's going to go there because it's a dark spot. And in here it says, make it bleed. They use the term make it bleed. He has to make the Kyber crystal bleed.
Is this where we get the red?
Is this a relative term? Or does he really, literally have to hurt the Kyber crystal? And again, is the Kyber crystal a living creature?
Right.
Is this the true form of a midichlorian? Is this a hive of where the midichlorians create?
Yeah,
Are Kyber crystals created by midichlorians?
I don't know. That's kind of a fascinating thing, because you're talking about this abstract Force thing, right?
Uh-huh.
It's invisible. It's not physical. And then there's midichlorians. Are those physical? Or are they like something that's so small you can't see, like an atom? And then you kind of throw in the Kyber crystal thing. That's an actual physical thing, but it somehow is related to the Force or interacts with it.
From what I understand, it channels the energy.
Okay.
And it maybe not channel. It produces energy.
Okay.
But that energy can be manipulated easily by the Force.
Okay.
So, I mean, they are connected, but they're also not.
All right.
I don't know. Are there other crystals that you can make lightsabers out of that are...
Not Kyber crystals?
Right. I can either make knives out of high-grade steel or low-grade steel. Are Kyber crystals high-grade, or is there a low-grade? I make one, but it's more like a butter knife. I can cut bread with it.
Maybe that's what the colors have. The colors are indications.
It could be. Okay, so that also brings up, talking about colors and stuff.
Right.
So it says, make it bleed, right? Well, we're talking about a universe with an infinite number of different beings. Why does make it bleed mean red?
Mm-hmm.
We've seen other creatures that don't have red blood.
Right.
So what if a Sith who doesn't have red blood, or a Jedi who didn't have red blood, and then you make that bleed, could you then get a Sith with a different color Kyber crystal?
I think we're overthinking it. They just picked red because
it's universally bleeding. Yeah.
It means bleeding.
Yeah. But the fun part is to take it to the extreme.
Yes, I agree. It's a fun thought experiment and a fun way of thinking about the universe.
That's what I love about comics in general, is that what blows my mind is, okay, so you watch the Avengers.
Right.
And you're like, no, that couldn't happen. I'm like, there's a Hulk. You're fine with that.
Right, that's right.
You're fine with the Hulk, but then you're upset about this.
Right.
But there's still a Hulk right there. Right. So where's your reality?
Line?
Yeah. Yeah, if you get blown up by gamma rays, then you're a pile of dust. You don't turn into the Hulk.
This one time.
Yeah. And so I love stretching things to the max.
Right.
Of credulity and saying, well, what if Darth Vader's blood is no longer red?
Right.
What if on Tatooine you bleed green?
well, then there's the whole thing of like, how much of Darth Vader is actually left? You know, like this. How much he has his skull and his head and his brain.
Yeah,
is it his torso?
He's a torso. There? I think he's got one arm.
Okay.
And he's got no legs, and he's missing his other arm. His one hand was already cut off, but I think now he's missing the whole arm.
Right.
But yeah, he's a mess.
He's
plus all the burns.
Hot mess.
Yeah. Plus all the burns. So
make it bleed.
Yeah, make it bleed. The vision of him killing Padme. Why does everyone... Wait, why am I... Oh, yeah, he had a vision of killing Padme. That's what I was just going to... I was excited about that. He had the vision of killing Padme.
Well, then when he has the Kyber crystal encounter, forcing his will on it, he has... Is it a vision of him killing Palpatine? And then...
Palpatine, not Padme. Palpatine. Yeah, he killed
Obi-Wan,
Palpatine,
right? And Obi-Wan Kenobi's there at the end. Here, I just opened to it. Yeah, so he has this encounter where he kills Palpatine, and then shows up with Obi-Wan Kenobi and allows, what is it? He looks like he allows Obi-Wan Kenobi to...
Yeah, this is like the path that he could have taken.
Right.
He could have killed Palpatine, followed Obi-Wan, been the hero, not been Vader. So what's that all about? Why is he all of a sudden having this?
I don't know. It's definitely feeding this like, no, don't blow the dam up and kill all the people thing, right? Because he's like having this dream. You're like, oh wow, maybe this took a turn back in the day, and he actually thought about a different path he could have taken.
Yeah.
I think it's trying to prime the pump of feeling like there's still something in him that wants a different path, you know?
Yeah, so he kills Palpatine, and then he like kneels down,
right?
And he asks for forgiveness.
Right.
From Obi-Wan.
And it's almost like he wants Obi-Wan to kill him, and then it's like Obi-Wan turns off his lightsaber, I think, in the next scene.
Yeah, this is like the last chance.
Right.
Because then he grabs the Kyber crystal and goes, no, and he slams it down.
Finalizing.
This is all there is, and then it just explodes.
Right.
Force lightning everywhere. And he's reliving all the stuff. Yeah, that was... This whole sequence of like... what's really happening, and then the flashback, and then what's really happening.
Yeah.
It's really intense.
It is, and they did a really good job of presenting it, and they did a great job of making me think it was real. Like,
yeah.
There was no transition of, like, it looked exactly like the last scene that was, quote, reality.
Right.
So, and they're setting it up to make you think he's killing Palpatine, and then he's going to Obi-Wan, and then he's... Yeah. It was a great sell. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and then in issue 6, we kind of see Vader being disassembled.
Yes, I loved that scene.
And this is that scene that you were talking about where he's like, I'll have somebody fix it.
Yep.
And then his eyes like get really wide, and he goes, oh, I sense anger. I should have known. This armor is you.
Right.
It's only appropriate that you should make it your own.
What I liked about this scene is it does two things. It pulls back some of the humanity of Anakin, right? The tinkering nature of him.
Right.
But it also, it's almost like it's a pathway of control for him. It's something, it's an escape / control for Vader.
Right.
Like almost a coping thing.
If you want to think more diabolically,
Uh-huh.
it's also what happened the last time he woke up.
He attacked Palpatine.
He attacked Palpatine, and Palpatine put him in his place.
Right.
With the Force lightning. This is also a chance for him to have somebody who's not run by Palpatine set up his armor. So now Palpatine has no idea what's going on with this armor. He could have made it to be stronger. He could have made it... He knows all the kinks that need to be fixed, for one. But also, he knows that Palpatine's a dick. And he knows that he needs to defend himself against it.
Right.
One thing that got me real excited, it has nothing to do with the story, but this Jedi robe, this white one, how awesome does that look?
That's pretty
cool.
He's
got like a mask, and he's got like this...
It has designs on it, too, on the...
Yeah, it's very, very samurai, but then Jedi.
Right.
And he's got like a bow staff.
It reminds
I want to see it in a movie.
It reminds me of, what's the Red Guard in the most recent movie? What are they...
I think they're still just the Red Guard.
The Red Guard.
Yeah.
It kind of has that, like, feeling to it a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more ninja, samurai.
Right.
Elements.
So Vader goes into this library because he's looking for... What we find out is he's looking for this document that has all of the Force wielders in it. And there's somebody else in there who gives him some attitude. And we find out he's like a new... So there were a splinter of the Jedi who said, you know what? We'll join you.
Right.
And again, this is where Palpatine starts kind of veering off of the Sith way.
Right.
Yeah, they're not necessarily his apprentices, but they're still allowed to live.
Right.
Because they're
serving a purpose or a function.
So what are your thoughts on all these new styles of lightsabers? Because this guy's got one where it's double-sided, but it's like a circle, and it'll spin
and it
like
spins.
a helicopter.
I was like, what is going on? The fight scene with that, though, is really interesting.
Yeah.
And he kind of gives Vader, at least in the lightsaber fighting part, a run for his money.
Yeah, until right here where Vader says, yeah, there's a circle that has your hand in it, and I'm just going to stick my lightsaber in there and ruin you. Another thing is Palpatine purposely didn't tell each other about it.
He seems to have this thing where he likes to pit everyone against each other.
Well, again, that goes again. If this guy were to kill Vader, maybe he's like, well, you're my apprentice now. So it makes sense in that way.
Like keeping them so busy fighting each other that they're not trying to take him out.
But you see it mostly in like these comics about the other Vader story. Darth Vader is the best troll in the galaxy. Like, he is constantly trolling people. He just picks at them, does these backhanded comments. And so you kind of see that here, too, of where he just goes in and like, yeah, you're here. I'm going to go ahead and kill you because you're nothing. I think he says he's giving his new suit a test.
Right.
He's testing his new suit.
I needed a test run anyways.
Yeah, and so Palpatine has no problems. And he's very upfront with it, too. Of, if you can't survive, then you're just not my apprentice.
Right.
So it goes to that one master, one apprentice. But I love how, especially in that fight scene, you see Anakin kind of come through, where he's cocky.
Right.
And there's no problem because I'm just going to pull through. And I'm going to,
it's going to work out. I'm going to kill you. No problem.
So what did you think of the aspect of the Grand Inquisitors?
Yeah, that
they brought up.
I had no reference point for that. I didn't know anything.
Yeah, I think it's brand new. At least it was for me. But it's just this stealth force.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of cool, and they're Force users.
Yeah,
and they have some type of lightsaber. Do they all have lightsaber?
Well, they have those same types of lightsabers. I think they lost their lightsaber. But they're all red.
Right. So have they done this process that...
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he's just mass producing lightsaber, because maybe that's what he did with the kyber crystals.
Right, that he took out of all the other ones.
Because Palpatine could have done it.
Right.
And he's not seeing these guys as Sith.
Right.
They're just allowed to live.
I would love to read some issues of comics about like the missions that this, what is it, Inquisitor Force goes on.
Yeah, so
are they
that brings me to my next question. You want to do this again sometime?
Sure.
Yeah, all right. I'll get the second volume.
I'd like that.
And it's missions that he takes with the Grand Inquisitors.
Oh, I'd like that. That'd be really cool.
This is interesting because, for one, it expands the world of Vader.
Yes, exactly.
Whereas this focuses on Vader. It has to be a more narrow view. You get some branches out.
Right.
But it's Vader doing Vader.
Right.
Whereas this is Vader learning to be Vader.
Yeah.
And so they go to Mon Calamari. They go do all kinds of crazy stuff. At one point, you get introduced to a lightsaber gun.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, what is it? Shooting like lightsaber?
You load your lightsaber into it.
Okay.
And imagine if the lightsaber comes out to a certain point.
Right.
Imagine if it took the energy and it just said there is no cap right here.
Right.
And it goes.
So is it a solid beam or it's like it?
It's like a blaster, but
okay.
A lightsaber.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
That sounds pretty cool.
It's one of those things that's cool because it's so silly.
Right.
And because they can get away with it.
Right.
Because sometimes that'll fall flat and you're like, you're just being stupid.
Right.
But it
worked out in this case.
Yeah.
Context.
And so you kind of get introduced to this woman at the very end. She's sitting in like a cave petting a cat or something.
Is it a Jedi?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is another reclusive. Yeah, because that's the whole point of the Inquisitor Force, right?
Yeah, she ran.
Okay.
She didn't seclude herself because of the Barash.
Right.
Like, she ran. She was the librarian. Essentially.
Of the library that Vader fought this other guy in.
Yeah. So I don't want to give too much away, but like she's involved.
Okay.
And there's a whole big scheme. So yeah. So what did you think of Vader? What did you think of the comics?
Yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. The artwork was really cool. It's unique. Like I said, one of the things I best liked was just that perspective from inside the helmet.
Yeah.
I thought that was really neat. I enjoyed seeing how he tinkers still, but as Vader.
Yeah, seeing Anakin shine through.
That was really neat. I liked that a lot.
It gets really cool later when he starts meditating.
Uh-huh.
And you start kind of seeing more into the whole process. There's something that they haven't hammered out yet I'm real interested to see what happens with it.
It's really cool. And I would be curious to see how they play those, kind of like play your heartstrings with like, is there still something in Vader?
Yeah.
Is there not? You want him to do something, but you know he won't, and he doesn't. He kills everybody.
Yeah, all in all, it's probably one of my favorite stories. I think it's one of the best done things that Marvel has out right now.
And the crazy thing is, it's, quote, the bad guy, right? Like, it's the bad guy. It's the evil dude, and you're, like, reading this comic, and you're like, huh, this is really fascinating. This is really interesting. Yeah.
So you're down for more?
Yeah, I'm down for
more.
All
right, I'll have to order it. It'll probably be a while.
All right.
But again, you'll get it, and then I'll read it so that I can remember exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I wish I had my notes. I'd forgotten them.
Yeah. Well, you did fine without them.
Oh, that's good. Thanks.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what we had to say, then hit the like button. If you enjoy this sort of thing, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications, or else it won't tell you whenever these episodes go up. Remember, you can find me at The Comic Den on Instagram and Facebook, also on YouTube, but you're already listening to the show, so you know where we're at. So give me a follow on both of those. Until next time, folks, keep on comic booking.